Yeah, what a beautiful flute. I love the flute. Indian classical music. Anyhow, my dear chess friends, I welcome you to this little chess video. And will feature a game played by yours truly. And the reason that I thought that I might bring it to your attention is that it contains some very nice positional concepts and ideas. My opponent was from the Philippines and he opened with the move 1e4. I played c5 going into Sicilian defence, knight f3 going into the open Sicilian, and here I chose a somewhat unusual choice, not a main line, with g6. And I was having some great fun with the English opening at this time, and I thought, why not try and play it with reverse colours? If you know anything about this line, you will know that it has the awesome name of the hyper-accelerated dragon. One of the most awesome names in chess. But between you and I, all it really is the English opening with reverse colours. And we play it in exactly the same way, although we are a tempo down. My opponent played d4, I played c takes d, knight takes d4. Of course the bishop comes to the long diagonal. Bishop e3. And here it's important we put pressure on the centre. And we played knight to f6. If we don't put any pressure on the centre, our opponent can simply get a bind with a move like c4. So we make sure that he must play knight to c3 by playing knight to f6 ourselves. And indeed the knight came to c3. We castle. He played queen to d2. And here I played what is a double-edged sword. I played the move d5. Now this is correspondence chess, and you're allowed to look at databases of games played by human players. And I could find no game with the move d5 in it. And I looked and I looked and I could still find nothing wrong with this move. Now I haven't checked the game with the chess engine. I don't check my games with chess engines. But I can still find nothing wrong with this move. If we can play in the centre, we should play in the centre. And this was my rationale. I suppose if there is a drawback, it's this move that my opponent played, e5. It looks a very natural choice, a very aggressive choice. But, and this is the point, it gives up the centre. And this pawn on e5 has now entered our territory. And it will become a point of attack for us, easily accessible to our pawns and to our pieces. My knight has plenty of squares to go to. I chose knight to g4. My opponent played f4. His pawn was attacked twice and undefended. And here is a very instructive moment. I played the move knight takes e3. Now you need to ask yourself, why give the knight up for a passive bishop? And the answer quite clearly is that the bishop was an excellent defensive piece, able to defend these dark squares. And it's our intention to undermine and attack these dark squares, so it was better that this bishop was off the board. Now you can argue that it's a very bad bishop, blocked in by its own pieces, blocked in by its own pawns. But there are numerous examples in chess where what is apparently a deep positional rule is nothing more than dogma. And we cannot be dogmatic in our thinking in chess. There's a very famous game, Robert James Fischer versus Tigran Petrosian, where during the match Fischer was criticised because he gave up an active knight for a passive bishop. It's a very famous game. In fact, just let me show it to you because it highlights the concept that we should not be dogmatic in our thinking in chess. And yes, the bishop might be a bad piece, and yes, the knight might be active, but there are other considerations than simply saying, is this a good bishop or a bad bishop? Let me show you the Fischer game just for a moment. Here is the Fischer game on move 18. Black has just played king to f8 and Fischer plays the beautiful knight to c5, putting his knight on a beautiful outpost on c5. Petrosian, his bishop is forced back, and look how this knight absolutely dominates that bishop. The bishop is very, very passive indeed. Fischer plays f3, keeping the knight out of e4. Petrosian plays rook to a7. Rook comes to e5. And the bishop comes to d7. And here Fischer plays one of the most awesome moves in chess history. He plays knight takes d7, exchanging his good knight for what was essentially a passive bishop. And his idea is that he wants to penetrate on the 7th rank. Rook takes d7, rook comes to c1, and you will see how these rooks eventually reach the 7th rank. And look at that, beautiful play. And Fischer went on to win a very, very convincing and beautiful game of chess. The idea, of course, we are interested in is that we should not be dogmatic in chess. Yes, the bishop was passive. Yes, the knight was active. But there were other considerations simply than, is this a good bishop or is this an active knight? And Fischer demonstrated that admirably with knight takes d7, exchanging his good knight for an essentially passive bishop. So we'll go back to my humble game now. Okay, back to my game now. And White has just played f4. As I stated, I chopped that bishop, which appeared to me such a good defensive piece, even though it was passive. White played queen takes e3. Knight comes to the centre, putting pressure on the e5 point. White castled queenside. And I played e6. It looks as though I am blockading in my bishop. But I want to blockade these pawns, and then once they are blockaded, to undermine them because they are particularly advanced and easy targets for my pawns and pieces. White played g4. He's coming to get me. But before he can do that, because of the advanced nature of his pawns, because they are in such close proximity to my pawns and my pieces, I can simply attack them with this move f6. And this begins our quest for the dark squares. French defence style. And it's interesting to note that this move comes with some drawbacks. If white takes on f6, I will be left with a backward pawn on a half-open file. But the advantages of undermining these advanced pawns outweigh the negatives, and I'm prepared to accept a positional weakness like that if it gives me activity. And there's a wonderful Boris Gelfand game where he sacrifices 2 pawns for activity in his game against Anand. And I'll just show you that because it's very, very interesting. Look at this position here. This is game 12 from the World Championship between Viswanathan Anand and Boris Gelfand. It's Boris Gelfand with the black pieces. And look at his bishops. They have absolutely what? No activity. And as we know, activity is what? That is correct. It is the underlying principle of all chess games. And in order to activate his pieces, Boris Gelfand was willing to sacrifice material for activity. And he played the wonderful move after Anand's knight to d2, c4, instantly activating his bishop on f8 at the cost of a pawn. Anand took the pawn, bishop came to a6, which is an active post. And Gelfand sacrificed a second pawn. But his pieces are now active and he now has excellent control of the centre. So I relate this to you because sometimes it is simply necessary to take drastic action to free our pieces. And Boris Gelfand in this game showed very, very amazing positional understanding, sacrificing 2 pawns for activity. So we'll go back to my game now because it is not dissimilar. I need to do something to activate my pieces which are blockaded by my opponent's pawns. Okay, welcome back to our little game here, and of course I've just played the move f6, seeking to undermine these advanced pawns. But it must be noted that the move f6 does not come without a drawback. If white, of course, takes on f6, I will have a backward pawn on a half-open file, and the e6 point might become a point of attack for my opponent. But I weighed it up in my mind and thought that the benefits of f6 outweighed the deficits, and I played the move. My opponent played bishop to b5, attacking the knight, and I very gleefully took on e5. I now have scope for my rook and some scope for my bishop. And you'll see, dear chess friends, how this position transforms itself just in a minute. Knight takes c6 was played. B takes c6. The bishop took on c6, attacking the rook. But we have a very interesting intermezzo move with e takes f4, tempoing the queen. Queen is forced to move, and of course we now have time to move our rook, and we play rook to b8. h4 was played, trying some type of pawn storm against the castle king position. And here I practically forced a queen trade. It's important if I am to make anything of my central pawns that they are not tied down with the powerful queen. The queen could mess with my plans, and it seemed to me to be advantageous if the queens were swapped off. So I practically forced a queen trade. Of course, the point b2 is also attacked. So essentially white is forced to take. And I retook with the rook. Bishop went to a4. And here is a very interesting moment. Here I played the move bishop takes c3. Now why exchange a beautiful bishop for a knight on c3? And the answer, dear chess friends, is quite simple. The knight is the best blockader of pawns on the chessboard. And it's in my interest to exchange off this knight, because my ultimate plan is to advance my two passed pawns. And this knight could have been an excellent defensive piece, blockading my pawns. So I simply swapped it off. I'm not entirely sure if it's objectively sound, but it seemed to me to be the best move at the time. B takes c was played, and the rook came to d6 behind the passed pawn. g5 and e5, and the pawns begin their march. Bishop b3, putting pressure on the d5 point. I'm able to defend with bishop to b7, and the rook came out of the gaze of this bishop on b7. And here I played the interesting move f3. It simply appeared to me that it was not possible for white to take the pawn on e5 because of the speed of the passed pawn on the f file. White in fact saw it differently, and he played rook takes e5, and who can blame him? It looked like a free pawn. Pawn to f2, asking white if it was really wise to take that pawn on e5. Rook was forced to f1 to become a passive defender, and we can attack the rook with bishop to a6. Rook takes d5 was played, and here I played bishop takes f1, trying to realise my ambition of promoting my pawn. Rook takes d6, came with check. I was forced into the corner with king to h8, and the bishop came to d5. Now, this is actually a very subtle and excellent defensive move, because after I get my bishop out of the way, white played bishop to g2. And his idea is simply this, that as soon as I promote, he will exchange his bishop for my queen, absolutely nullifying the pressure. And although I will be a bishop for 2 pawns up, he may be able to make something with his rook and his queenside pawns. So I thought it was an excellent move myself from my opponent. Naturally, I queened, and white nullified any pretense that I had by simply exchanging his bishop for the promoted piece. King came to b2, bishop to c4, there's a check thrown in, king to g7. I'm not entirely sure this was best. I might have played something different, but rook to c8 was played. Bishop came to e6, and I threatened simply to exchange off rooks. Rook c6, check, king e3, and here I go after this loose pawn, of course. c4, take the pawn. Come in with the check, of course the king is forced, and I simply take off the rook. And this is a very interesting moment. I actually, believe it or not, I offered my opponent a draw, because in my mind I thought that he had stalemate chances. I just wasn't looking at the position correctly, but my opponent unwisely declined the draw, believe it or not. And this is where this ancient Chinese proverb came to my mind. It's better to suffer the winter's wind than the tiger's breath. King e5, king took on e7, king f4, king b6, bishop drops back, and here my opponent resigned. Because even if he tries to promote, I will simply take it. I will win these kingside pawns, and nothing can stop them promoting. So this was my game, dear chess friends. I wanted to relate to you. It had some, in my mind, interesting instructional moments. Particularly with regard to the exchange of an active knight for a seemingly passive bishop, and of course the bishop exchanging itself for a knight that could potentially be an excellent blockader of pawns. So I thank you very much, dear chess friends, for watching this little chess video. I hope you got something from it, and I sincerely wish you well with your own chess. Take care and goodbye.